My name is Abigail Reed, I'm 35 years old, and I design spaces where people live their lives. Grand hotel lobbies, sleek corporate headquarters, cozy family homes. I build dreams out of glass and steel and light. Here in Kansas City, Missouri, I've built a name for myself, brick by brick, project by project. But on a Tuesday night, under a sky the color of a fresh bruise, I learned that the one place I could never design my way into was my own family. I'd driven to my childhood home, the same colonial-style house I'd caught lightning bugs in front of as a kid. In my purse was the monthly check for my mother's mounting medical expenses, a ritual I'd performed for the last 5 years. I walked up the familiar flagstone path, leaves crunching under my heels, and slid my key into the lock of the heavy oak door. Except it didn't slide in. I pushed. I jiggled it. Nothing. A metallic clink echoed my confusion. Click, click, click. It felt like hitting a wall of solid steel. I tried again, a knot of unease tightening in my stomach. They couldn't have changed the locks without telling me, right? My phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out, expecting a text from a client. Instead, I saw my mother's name. My thumb swiped open the message, and the world tilted on its axis. It wasn't a casual, "Oh honey, we got new locks, let me buzz you in." It was 6 brutal words that severed a lifetime of trying. "Abby, the locks are changed. Don't call or come over. We're done." The air left my lungs in a silent gasp. Done? Just like that. No conversation, no argument, just an eviction notice from my own life. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic bird trapped in a cage. But I didn't cry. I didn't beg. Years of being pushed aside had forged a core of steel inside me I didn't even know existed. I stood there in the cold, the porch light casting a lonely yellow circle around me, and I typed back 2 words. Got it. That was it. Years of pouring my heart, my soul, and hundreds of thousands of dollars into their lives, gone. But that text, that locked door, it was a line in the sand. I wasn't going to beg to be let back in. By midnight, my phone was blowing up. Mom's number flashed again and again, then my brother's, even my dad's. I'd been their safety net for years, and I had just cut the rope. Stick around to hear how it all unraveled. Growing up in Kansas City, our family seemed like the perfect American dream, at least from the outside. My father, Gregory Reed, was a local legend. He'd turned a single diner into Reed's Grill, a successful chain of steakhouses known for their thick-cut ribeyes and old-fashioned charm. He was a patriarch in every sense of the word, loud, demanding, and utterly obsessed with his legacy. My mother, Brenda, had been a sharp, ambitious woman with a promising career in banking before she married him. Then, she became his perfect accessory, smoothing over his rough edges and managing the home with quiet efficiency. And then there were the kids. My brother, Patrick, 4 years younger than me, was the golden child, the heir apparent. He was born with my father's name and the expectation that he would one day take over the empire. He could do no wrong. And me? I was Abigail Reed, the odd one out. The black sheep. While they talked profit margins and beef suppliers, I was dreaming of spaces and colors. I didn't see a restaurant, I saw the flow of traffic, the quality of light, the way a certain shade of blue could make people feel calm and welcome. The dinner table was my father's courtroom, and I was always on trial. "The restaurants are our future," he'd declare, his voice booming across the mashed potatoes. "You'll learn the business, Abigail. It's in your blood." But it wasn't. Grease-stained aprons and inventory sheets felt like a foreign language to me. My native tongue was floor plans and fabric swatches, sketched into the margins of my school notebooks. I was 17 when I finally got the courage to tell them. We were in the living room, the scent of my dad's cigar hanging in the air. "I want to study architecture," I said, my voice barely a whisper. Gregory let out a short, sharp laugh. Architecture. That's a hobby for rich wives, Abigail. People need steak, not pretty drawings. Stick to something real. I looked to my mother for help, for any sign of support. She just picked a piece of lint off the sofa cushion, her eyes fixed on her task. Her silence was always her verdict, and it was always in my father's favor. When the acceptance letter came from a top design school in Chicago, I felt like I could fly. But my father clipped my wings before I could even leave the ground. If you're not joining the family business, you're on your own, he said, his arms crossed, his face a stone mask. No tuition, no support. Not a dime. My mother nodded slowly beside him. Patrick, all of 13, just smirked from the corner, like he'd just won a race I didn't even know we were running. So I went. I put myself through school with a mountain of student loans and by working 2 jobs. I was a waitress slinging hash at a diner that smelled perpetually of burnt coffee, and I tutored wealthy kids who had more pocket money than I had for tuition. In 4 years, my father never once asked how I was paying my rent. My mother's occasional, hollow, "I'm proud of you, dear," on the phone was always followed by a gushing monologue about Patrick's latest C-grade average or how he was helping out at one of the restaurants. I remember one Christmas, I came home from college, exhausted. Patrick, then 20, had forgotten to lock up one of the restaurants. They were robbed, nearly $5,000 in cash and equipment gone. My father just sighed and clapped him on the back. "He's learning," Gregory said. "It's the cost of business." That same week, I got a 45-minute lecture about family loyalty because I missed a dinner to finish my final architectural model. The rift was undeniable. It wasn't a crack, it was a canyon. At family gatherings, my successful projects were met with polite nods before the conversation inevitably shifted back to the price of beef or Patrick's brilliant new idea for a happy hour special. They had chosen their heir, their legacy. And I was just the backup plan they never intended to use. If you're enjoying this story so far, please take a second to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. And let me know in the comments what city you're watching from. Every comment helps this story reach more people, and I'd be so grateful for your support. Thank you. After graduation, I didn't look back. Chicago had toughened me up, but Kansas City was home. I came back and started from the ground up. I redesigned local cafes, turning cramped, greasy spoons into bright, inviting spaces. My name started getting around. My first big break came when I was 27. A boutique hotel chain hired me to revamp their lobbies across the Midwest. My style, clean lines, warm textures, a touch of modern elegance, got noticed. Soon, the 6-figure contracts started rolling in. By the time I was 30, Abigail Reed was the go-to designer for luxury spaces in the city. I was successful, I was independent, and I was, for the most part, happy. But you can't outrun your family. 5 years ago, the first call came. It was my mom. She'd fallen seriously ill. The doctors were using scary words, and the treatments they were proposing came with terrifying price tags. The restaurants, Dad explained in a clipped, businesslike tone, were struggling. Rising costs, new competition. Insurance would barely cover the basics. I didn't hesitate. Before the phone call was even over, I was on my banking app, wiring the first of many payments for her hospital bills, the specialist visits, the expensive medications. "We'll pay you back," my father grunted over the phone a few days later. I knew it was a lie, but I said, "Don't worry about it. Just focus on Mom." My mother sent a text a week later. 2 words, "Thank you." That was it. No call. No real expression of gratitude for the tens of thousands of dollars I just sent. It stung, a sharp, familiar ache. But I swallowed it. This was for her health, I told myself, not for their approval. I was trying to be a good daughter, to finally prove I was a part of this family, that I cared. I thought that maybe, just maybe, this was my chance to bridge the canyon between us. I had no idea I was just handing them the materials to build a toll booth on their side, with me as the only one expected to pay. If my mother's illness was a slow leak in my finances, my brother Patrick was a gaping hole in the hull of a sinking ship. Just out of his 20s, he decided he was an entrepreneur. He launched a craft brewery that tanked within a year, leaving him drowning in debt. The call I'll never forget came at 2 a.m. I picked up, my heart pounding, thinking it was about my mom. It was Patrick, his voice a high-pitched, panicked whisper. "Abby, you gotta help me. You gotta help me, please." "Patrick, what is it? Is it Mom?" No, it's me." He was crying now. "It wasn't just business debts, Abby. I have gambling debts. I owe some very serious people a lot of money. They said they're going to break my legs." Ice flooded my veins. "How much?" "30,000, he choked out. "And you can't tell Dad?" "Please, Abby, it'll kill Mom if she finds out. You're the only one who can fix this. You're the successful one." His words were a masterclass in manipulation. He invoked our parents' health, my success, my guilt. He boxed me in until there was only one way out. Shaking with a mixture of rage and fear for my idiot brother, I opened my banking app again. I sent him the $30,000. A few months later, I had to send another $20,000 to keep the restaurants afloat, because I found out he'd been skimming from the business to try and cover his losses. He never said thank you. Not once. The next time I saw him was at a family barbecue. I watched, invisible from the other side of the yard, as he stood by the grill, a beer in his hand, bragging to our cousins about how he'd turned things around all by himself. My father clapped him on the back, beaming with pride. "That's my boy," Gregory bellowed. "Got the Reed business sense." I stood there, a ghost at my own family's party. The pattern was set. The walk-in fridge for the flagship restaurant broke down. I paid for it. Mom's treatment required a specialist in Dallas. I paid for the travel, the hotel, the consultations. Every check I wrote, every bill I paid, was me screaming without making a sound, "See me. Value me. Love me." But they didn't hear it. They just cashed the checks. Over the years, it added up to hundreds of thousands of dollars. And they gave nothing back. After years of being their silent benefactor, I decided to do something for myself. My architecture firm was thriving, but I had a new vision, a sustainable design firm, specializing in eco-friendly materials for the hospitality industry. It wasn't just a passion project, it was a solid business plan, backed by months of market research showing a huge demand for green design in Kansas City's growing hotel and restaurant scene. For the first time, I was going to ask them for something. Not a handout, but an investment. A chance for them to believe in me. I prepared a full presentation, complete with cost breakdowns, projected returns, and market analysis. I invited them to a formal meeting at our family home. I stood in the dining room, my laptop open, my slides ready. My father sat at the head of the table, arms crossed, his face an unreadable slab of granite. My mother hovered nearby, nervously setting out coffee cups, avoiding my eyes. Patrick slouched in his chair, scrolling on his phone, the picture of bored indifference. The only person who looked at me was Patrick's wife, Felicity. She sat quietly beside him, offering me a small, encouraging smile. I took a deep breath. "This could put Kansas City on the map for sustainable design," I said, my voice steady despite the tremor in my hands. "I'm asking for a $200,000 investment. I'll pay it back, with interest, within 3 years." My father didn't let me get to the next slide. A pipe dream, he interrupted, leaning forward. You think hotels care about recycled wood? They want cheap, not your fancy green experiments. His words were a slap, but I pushed on, trying to show him the data. Patrick snorted without looking up from his phone. Sounds like a waste of money, he mumbled. Why don't you just stick to decorating houses? My fists clenched under the table, my face burning with humiliation. I turned to my mother, a desperate, silent plea in my eyes. Mom. You've seen my work. You know I can do this. She hesitated, her gaze flickering from me to my father. It just sounds so risky, Jennifer, she finally said, her voice barely audible. The restaurants are what we know. It stung worse than my father's dismissal. Felicity spoke up, her voice soft but clear. I think it's innovative, she said, glancing nervously at her husband. Sustainability is a big deal now. For a split second, I felt a spark of hope. But Patrick shot her a look, a cold, hard glare, and she shrank back into her chair, silenced. My father waved a dismissive hand, ending the discussion. We're not throwing money at this, he declared. Patrick is working on securing a new restaurant location. That's our priority. I packed up my laptop, my hands shaking. They didn't just reject my business plan. They rejected me. Again. A few weeks later, I was at another Sunday dinner I couldn't get out of. The air was still thick with the aftermath of my failed presentation. I was just trying to get through the evening, planning my escape, when Felicity pulled me aside in the kitchen as I was getting my coat. She was twisting a dish towel in her hands, her knuckles white. She glanced nervously back toward the dining room, where I could hear the low rumble of my father's voice. Abby, she said, her voice a frantic whisper. There's something you need to know. The reason the restaurants are always struggling, it's not just bad business. I waited, my stomach twisting. It's Patrick, she breathed, her eyes wide with fear and guilt. He's been taking money from the business. For years. Skimming cash, faking invoices, thousands and thousands of dollars. I found a hidden bank account. He's lying to your parents, he's lying to everyone. I just stood there, frozen, the blood draining from my face. It all clicked into place, the constant cash shortages, the late vendor payments I'd covered, the emergencies that only my money could fix. Before I could say anything, I heard my father's voice rise from the dining room. I crept closer, hiding in the shadows of the doorway. He was talking to my mother. We need to finalize the will, Gregory said, his tone firm and final. It all goes to Patrick. He's the only one who's shown any loyalty, the only one keeping this family together. Abigail's off in her own world. She doesn't really care about us. My heart stopped. I leaned against the wall, struggling to breathe. My mother murmured something, her voice soft with what I desperately wanted to believe was protest. She's given us so much, Gregory. Money, my father spat the word out like it was poison. She's given us money, not loyalty. Patrick is our legacy. The restaurants, the house, it all goes to him. He's earned it. I felt the floor drop out from under me. All those years, all that money, all that sacrifice, and they saw me as disloyal. They were rewarding the son who was robbing them blind and punishing the daughter who was keeping them afloat. I slipped out the back door into the cold night air, their words echoing in my head. The betrayal was a physical thing, a shard of ice piercing my chest. I finally understood. I wasn't their daughter. I was their insurance policy. And they had just cancelled me. I drove home that night in a daze, the conversation I'd overheard playing on a torturous loop in my mind. The next morning, I woke up with a cold, hard clarity I hadn't felt in years. I was done. I was going to go over there, confront them with what I knew, and end this charade for good. That's how I ended up on their front porch on that Tuesday evening, my key useless in my hand, staring at my mother's text. Abby, the locks are changed. Don't call or come over. We're done. They had made their move first. They had cut me out before I could even speak. I sat in my car in front of their house, the streetlights starting to glow in the twilight. The hurt was still there, a deep, primal wound. But for the first time, it was overshadowed by something else, rage. A cold, quiet, liberating rage. I wasn't going to chase them. I wasn't going to plead. I picked up my phone, typed, got it, and hit send. Then, I opened my banking app. My fingers moved with a calm, deliberate precision. First, the recurring monthly transfer labeled Mom's Medical Fund. 5 years of payments. I tapped the screen. Cancel recurring payment. A small, digital confirmation popped up. Done. Next, the automatic payment to a credit card I knew belonged to Patrick, the one I'd been paying down to handle his overflow expenses. Cancel. Done. Finally, the account I'd set up to automatically cover the utility bills for the main Reed's Grill location, a safety net I'd created 2 years ago after they'd almost had their power shut off. Cancel. Done. Over $300,000. That's the rough tally I came to in my head. Years of my hard work, my sweat, my success, all siphoned into their black hole of entitlement. Cutting those digital ties felt like severing anchor chains. With each tap, I felt lighter. I wasn't just cutting off their money. I was taking back my life. By midnight, the storm hit. My phone, sitting on the coffee table, began to vibrate and light up like a fire alarm. Missed call, Mom. Missed call, Mom. Voicemail, Patrick. I let his voicemail play on speaker. You think you can just walk away, Abby? He spat, his voice laced with venom. You're selfish. Leaving us high and dry like this. You'll regret this. We'll take legal action if we have to. I almost laughed. Legal action for what? For stopping his allowance. Then came the texts from my mother, a masterclass in guilt-tripping. How could you do this to me? After everything I've been through, you're abandoning your own mother, followed by, I raised you better than this. At 1 a.m., my father called. I let it go to voicemail. His voice boomed through the speaker, full of indignation. Abigail, you need to fix this. Immediately. The restaurants can't survive without your help. You owe us that much. Owed them. The hypocrisy was breathtaking. I saved the voicemail as a reminder. He called back later, and this time, I picked up. I didn't say anything, just listened. You're putting your mother's health at risk, he said, his voice low and threatening. My own voice was quiet, but colder than ice. I've stepped up for years, Dad. I'm done. You'll change your mind, he said, when you see what this does to us. I hung up. It wasn't a plea. It was a threat. And it solidified my resolve. They didn't want me, their daughter. They wanted their ATM. And it was finally, officially, out of service. A week of silence on my end and escalating panic on theirs led to one final request, a meeting. I agreed, not for reconciliation, but for closure. I chose the place, a busy, neutral ground cafe downtown. I arrived to find them already there, huddled together in a corner booth, Gregory, Brenda, and Patrick. A united front of dysfunction. Felicity was notably absent. She'd texted me earlier, I'm so sorry, Abby. I can't. I didn't blame her. I walked toward them, and for the first time, I felt no fear, no anxiety, no desperate need for their approval. I was no longer the little girl hoping for a pat on the head. I was the woman who had built her own empire while they were trying to ruin theirs. I sat down and didn't wait for them to start. "Before you begin," I said, my voice calm and even, "I have some news. I sold my sustainable design project." A national firm in Chicago bought the entire business plan and portfolio. I paused, letting my words hang in the air. They paid $1.5 million for it. The effect was instantaneous. 3 jaws dropped in unison. Patrick's smug look evaporated, replaced by wide-eyed disbelief. My father's face tightened, a muscle twitching in his jaw. My mother just stared. "I built that from nothing," I continued, looking directly at my father. "Without your help. In fact, despite your active disbelief. I turned to all of them. I gave you everything. My money, my time, my trust. I paid for Mom's treatments, I paid off Patrick's gambling debts, I kept your restaurants from going under. And in return, you cut me from your will. You called me disloyal. You chose the son who was stealing from you over the daughter who was saving you." Patrick's face turned beet red. "You're lying," he sputtered. "You're just jealous, trying to tear us apart." "The receipts don't lie, Patrick," I said, my voice dropping. "The hidden accounts don't lie. I know what you did." My mother's hand flew to her mouth, a small, choked gasp escaping her lips. She knew. Of course, she knew. "You don't get to judge us," my father snarled, recovering his bluster. "You walked away from the family business." I let out a short, bitter laugh. "I walked away. You pushed me out from the day I was born. You changed the locks on my childhood home, Dad. You literally locked me out." My mother found her voice then, the same soft, pleading tone she'd used 100 times to reel me back in. "Abby, please," she whispered, tears welling in her eyes. "We're your family. You can't turn your back on us now." I met her tear-filled gaze, and for the first time, I felt nothing. The well of my sympathy had finally run dry. "You turned your back first, Mom. Your text message said it all, we're done. That was your choice. I'm just finally accepting it. I am done being your safety net. I deserve respect, not manipulation. If you can't give me that, then we are, in fact, finished. You think you're better than us." Patrick scoffed, a desperate final jab. "You'll come crawling back." I shook my head slowly. "No, Patrick. I won't." I stood up, my chair scraping softly against the floor. This was it. The last word. The final curtain. My father's face was a thundercloud. "You'll regret this, Abigail," he said, his voice low and venomous. I didn't respond. I turned and walked out of the cafe, the bell on the door chiming my departure. I didn't look back. My heart was heavy, but my spirit was free. A year later, I heard the fallout through the city grapevine. It's a small town in some ways. The news traveled. Reed's Grill, the legacy my father was so obsessed with, went bankrupt. Without my constant cash infusions to patch the holes Patrick was secretly tearing in its hull, the whole enterprise sank. I heard Patrick himself faced a storm of legal trouble. It turns out, when you steal from your own company, the vendors you don't pay have a tendency to sue. His years of theft were exposed in a very public, very ugly way. My mother and father retreated into a quiet, isolated life, their empire reduced to ashes, their golden boy tarnished beyond repair. And Felicity? I heard she had left Patrick. She filed for divorce and moved to a new city to start fresh. I hoped she found peace. As for me, I moved forward. I poured my energy, my time, and the proceeds from my $1.5 million sale into my own firm. I expanded, hired a brilliant team, and started taking on international clients. My life isn't perfect, but it's mine. Built on my own terms, not as a footnote in theirs. I found a profound peace in setting that final boundary. For years, I thought I had to earn their love, to prove my worth through sacrifice and success. But no amount of money could buy their respect, because they had already decided I wasn't worthy of it. Setting boundaries wasn't selfish. It was survival. It taught me that family isn't an obligation to endure endless pain. It should be a bond that lifts you up. And if it doesn't, you have every right to let go and build your own foundation. Thank you for staying with me through this journey. It wasn't easy to share, but it's my truth. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Have you ever had to set boundaries like this with family? And let me ask you, Aita for cutting them off completely, even my mom? Or was I right to finally choose myself? Drop a comment below and let's talk. Your stories matter, and I'm grateful for every one of you who listened. If you enjoyed this story, please hit that like button and consider subscribing to the channel for more content just like this. It really helps a lot. Thanks for watching.